I must say this is a bit of an out-of-body experience for me. It's not every day the Vice President and Secretary Clinton come to visit us in the Capitol, but it's not every day the Democratic leader gets to show us how he looks on canvas. I know our guests wouldn't miss it. I know Landra and the rest of the Reid family won't miss this moment either. It's great to see all of you here. You'll hear some tributes to Harry's service shortly. I offered my own on the Senate floor earlier today. One of the stories I told was about Landra and Harry's first date. He promised her a movie. She wound up push-starting his car. But Landra, unlike most teenagers, didn't storm off or complain. She reassured Harry instead with a warm smile. Harry says that smile changed him. He says it stuck with him through the decades, and so has Landra. They've been by each other's sides through the highs and the lows, the ups and the downs, political scares, health scares. They've seen it all, but we haven't. We still haven't seen Harry in 2 dimensions. I'm sure you're all curious to see what lies behind that curtain. Is it Harry sitting in his office? Is it Harry leaning on a cactus? Is it Harry high-fiving Bryce Harper? Well, we'll find out soon enough, just as soon as the Vice President finishes his remarks. Actually, you may be here a while. In any case, let me welcome everyone. Congratulations, Harry. Now on with the show.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Leader McConnell, for your hospitality, for your kind words about our special guest. The presence of such honored guests is a potent testimony to the towering leadership of Harry Reid. Vice President Joe Biden, President of the Senate, the best and most beloved Vice President in our history, and I mean that sincerely. Secretary and Senator Hillary Clinton. Thank you for your immeasurable contributions and leadership to our country. Senator Chuck Schumer, an outstanding leader in his own right, who will build on Senator Harry Reid's legacy. When I first learned of this ceremony, I thought there would be only one musical accompaniment worthy of Harry Reid's life, Aaron Copland's Fanfare for the Common Man. Of course, Harry Reid, unique in Washington for another reason, Harry Reid doesn't like listening to other people compliment him or sing his praises. Many of us have found that Harry has left us alone on the phone call because he has figured out the business of the call is over and we just want to say nice things about him. Harry? When I learned of his, shall we say, departure was imminent, I said, Harry, we have to have a beautiful dinner in your honor, inviting all of your friends from all over the country. He said, forget that. I'd rather spend the money feeding the poor, giving it to the university. And that's how he is. This is his moment. It's really a miracle that we've gotten him to think, persuaded him to sit through all of us saying how wonderful he is. Harry, in case you're tempted to walk out from all of this praise, we've asked the Sergeant-at-Arms to bar the door. It has been my privilege to work side by side with Harry Reid for more than a decade. To observe Harry is to observe a master at work. His effectiveness sprang from his commitment to his values, but his respect also for his colleagues. Harry and I had many occasions to evaluate the leadership and the courage of our colleagues as we've entered one fray or another. In all of my years, again, more than 10, working with Harry as leaders, he always spoke in the most glowing, respectful, and understanding way about all of his senators and Republican senators as well. Very respectful of everyone's point of view, the constituents they represented. Never anything but the finest word. His respect for them was reciprocated in his repeated election as leader, and here we are. In every battle, in every bill, anyone who has worked side by side with Harry Reid would say that he's been unparalleled. His leadership on the floor, his mastery of the Senate rules, his command and the respect that he has on both sides of the aisle, on both sides of the Capitol, and we know up and down Pennsylvania Avenue. Today, we unveil a portrait of one of the greatest leaders the Senate has ever known. Indeed, it's hard to imagine, with all due respect, that we will ever see his like again. To his family, he talked about you all of the time, Londra and the children and the grandchildren. He was here because of his biography, from Searchlight to Capitol Police Officer to Senate Majority Leader. He was here because of his values. He was here because of his family and the strength that they gave him. And so to his family, I think everyone in this room can say, we've heard about you, we know the love that he has had for you, and we hope that you will always know how respected your grandfather, your father, and Londra, the joy of his life, your husband. Thank you for sharing Harry Reid with our country. We are all in your debt. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. This is not exactly the speech at the Capitol I hoped to be giving after the election. But after a few weeks of taking selfies in the woods, I thought it would be a good idea to come out. And I am very grateful to Harry for inviting me to be part of this celebration. As we celebrate a great leader and a great senator, and yes, a great American, I just want to pause for a moment and mark the passing of one of our great Americans as well. Senator John Glenn, a friend to many of us and a genuine American hero, passed away today. And I know the tributes will be flowing. I'm sure the congressional record will be filled with pages of appreciation and recognition of this extraordinary American's life. It is fitting that we're here in the Kennedy Caucus Room, which has seen so much history, Harry got his start in politics organizing for JFK. Even then, he knew how to win. My very first experience as an intern here on the Hill was helping with hearings right in this caucus room. And it's fitting that we would gather in a place that represents the values of this extraordinary deliberative body. I want to thank Landra and the entire Reid family for sharing Harry with us all these years. And I'm delighted to be here with Vice President Biden, leaders McConnell and Pelosi, and my former partner from New York, Chuck Schumer, as well as so many other friends and former colleagues. Today we are hanging Harry's portrait here in the Capitol, but the more fitting portrait of him will be the one that goes in the dictionary next to the word fighter. Throughout his career, Harry's fought the good fight on behalf of the working families of Nevada and all Americans. Harry welcomed me as a new senator more than 15 years ago, and over the years, he became both a trusted colleague as well as a friend. One of my favorite memories, Harry, is going with you to Fallon, Nevada. We went to hold a hearing about the high rates of leukemia in that small town. We both shared a passion for healthcare and a worry about so-called cancer clusters. And on that trip and on many occasions, I saw firsthand Harry's deep commitment to the state and country he loved and served so well. No matter how high he rose here in Washington, he never lost touch with the people and values he grew up with back in Searchlight. In the little house where he was born, there was an embroidered pillowcase with a quote from Franklin Roosevelt that embodied Harry's life and career. We can, we must, we will. I've walked the neighborhoods, sat in union halls, met workers in casino kitchens, and everywhere I went, Nevadans told me how much it meant to them to have Harry Reid as their corner man. We've seen the strength of that bond in election after election. I've benefited from it, and so have many Democrats. Harry's commitment to our country runs just as deep. Throughout his career, he's fought tirelessly to protect America's public lands and natural beauty, from protecting the Great Basin National Park to restoring Lake Tahoe to leading the way on clean energy. Harry's legacy is embodied in landmark legislation that made life better for American families, like the Affordable Care Act, which wouldn't have passed without his leadership and now provides health coverage to more than 22 million people. Millions of young people can stay on their parents' health plans because Harry Reid fought for it. And that's not all. Millions of seniors rely on Social Security today because Harry led the fight to stop it from being privatized. He fought to pass comprehensive immigration reform and got it through the Senate. If it had been signed into law, millions of families would not be living in fear of being torn apart, and our economy would benefit from the millions of workers coming out of the shadows. As a senator, I learned a lot from Harry about how actually to get things done in this place. He's not a man of many words, but when he uses them, he always tells it as he sees it. He's never afraid to speak out, even when it's not easy or popular. Harry has fought for the simple but powerful idea that, yes, we are all created equal. He understood that all our leaders and all of our citizens alike have a responsibility to defend the rights of every single American. After the Constitutional Convention, it's well known, Benjamin Franklin was asked what form of government the new nation would have. A republic, he replied, if you can keep it. Well, that's still our charge, and it's as urgent as it's ever been, We must stand up for our democracy, just as Harry has done his entire career. Let me just mention briefly one threat in particular that should concern all Americans, Democrats, Republicans, and independents alike, especially those who serve in our Congress. The epidemic of malicious fake news and false propaganda that flooded social media over the past year. It's now clear that so-called fake news can have real-world consequences. This isn't about politics or partisanship. Lives are at risk, lives of ordinary people just trying to go about their days, to do their jobs, contribute to their communities. It's a danger that must be addressed, and addressed quickly. Bipartisan legislation is making its way through Congress to boost the government's response to foreign propaganda, and Silicon Valley is starting to grapple with the challenge and threat of fake news. It's imperative that leaders in both the private sector and the public sector step up to protect our democracy and innocent lives. Harry Reid and Vice President Biden may be stepping back from the daily scrum of politics and governing, but I know I speak for them as well as tens of millions of Americans when I say that we are all counting on those of you who remain, counting on you to defend this institution that all three of us love so much and the democratic values it embodies, counting on you to carry forward Harry Reid's legacy, to stand with working families and fight the good fight for a better, stronger, fairer America. Harry, my friend, thank you for your service and your friendship. I can't help but think of that wonderful song, The Boxer. You left your home and your family when you were no more than a boy. Now in the clearing stands a boxer, a fighter by his trade. You carried the reminders of every glove you faced, but even more, we carry the reminders of every fight you waged for us, and we will never, ever forget. I wish you and your family all the happiness in the world. You have earned it. Thank you, my friend.
My name is Joe Biden, and I work for Harry Reid. Harry, I gotta admit, or Landry, I should say, I gotta admit, years to come, every time I hear a dial tone, I'll think of Harry. He doesn't do that to you girls, does he? He stays on the line longer, right? Please, talk to me more, honey, right? He tells you that, right? What a beautiful family. What an incredible family you've both raised. And I also want to point out, Nancy, that gracefulness is more abundance in San Francisco than it is in Brooklyn. When you said that nice thing about me in the Senate, he looked at me and he said, yeah, Schumer said, yeah, it could have been Aaron Burr. So you know what I mean? I don't get it, you know what I mean? One big play on Broadway and everything changes, you know? Oh, man. Mitch, I know your reputation's now in tatters, having said nice things about me yesterday and being here today, but on a serious note, you remind me of what this room reminds me of. The great traditions of this body, the great traditions of the United States Senate, the way in which we all, Democrat and Republican, would use this place as ultimately a sort of a healing room at the end of the day. Some of the biggest in the 44 years I've been here, some of the most monumental fights and debates and arguments, as John Breaux can tell you, occurred right here in this room. Most controversial Supreme Court hearings in history, the whole Watergate era. But every single time as the nation seemed so divided, there were a few Democrats or a few Republicans who crossed over and embraced one another. Whether it was Howard Baker and Bill Cohen in the House during Watergate, or whether it was, I could go down the list. And so it seems appropriate, Mitch, and I want to personally thank you for it. Landra, you know, when we honor members of the Senate, we really don't spend much time taking the time to honor their spouses. No man or woman with a spouse or significant other has a right to run for office in the United States Senate without it being a joint agreement. Because there's no way, no matter what we say, no matter what we do, that you can avoid being caught in the crossfire, that you can avoid being called upon, that you can avoid becoming a subject of scrutiny yourself. And you have been an enormous, enormous asset, not only as a partner, but in your own right. Your work on literacy and women's health has been real. It's been substantial. It's affected the women of your state, affected the women of this country. You're preserving national landmarks like the Ford's Theater. It matters. It matters. History matters. And your courageous fight in your battle against cancer has given so much, how can I say, so much hope and courage to so many women, not only here but around the world. And you deserve our undying gratitude. And damn, it's been hard raising this boy, hasn't it? Holy God. First time I met Harry, I went out to campaign for him. I was 32 years old, I think. And the first thing I learned, a great respect for him, he said, yeah, I used to have to go out and shoot the mad dogs. I thought, holy God, what am I doing here? So as they say in Southern Delaware, you done good, girl. And to the whole family, what a remarkable family. I really mean it. What a remarkable family. You know, where I come from, in my family, like I suspect yours, if I heard my dad say it once, I heard him say it 1,000 times. And he said it to my sister as well. You got to be a man, and in his case, he'd say a woman. You got to be a man of your word. Without your word, you're not a man. You've got to be a man of your word. Without your word, you're not a man. I mean that. My word is abide. And that phrase was emblazoned in all of our hearts and our minds. And Harry, I think the highest honor any woman or man who served in this body could receive is the universal acknowledgement that you've been a man of your word. Whatever you say, you do. In the tradition of the room after whom this room is named, Teddy Kennedy, or Chris Dodd, or Tom Dash. I mean, you know, it was a common trait. Today, not just in politics, but there's this notion that I gave you my word, I told you I'd do it, but things have changed for me. Oh, how many times have you guys heard that? Things have changed. When I told you that, my situation was never the case with you. No matter how much has changed and how much keeping your word would hurt you politically. And that's one of the reasons I have such high respect for you. You know, I serve with a lot of great majority leaders and minority leaders. Mansfield, Byrd, Mitchell, Tom Daschle. And, but I don't think any of them were handed a tougher job at a tougher time than you were. And they've all did. If I had time, I could recite why I admired them all. But you took over 2 years before we got elected as the earth was crashing. The greatest recession in the history of America, short of a depression. That's not hyperbole, that's a simple fact. A financial meltdown that affected the entire world. And you made a commitment to a president that when you thought he was right, you would support him. And you kept your word. Forcing your colleagues through cajoling them, probably trying to intimidate occasionally, to cast some of the most unpopular votes anyone in the 36 years I served here would have to cast. Passing TARP, bailing out the very people the world thought caused the crisis. That's like delivering a snake in the mail to every American. You know, I mean, it was that popular. I really don't think there was much of a more unpopular vote to cast, including busing and all those serious social issues that were so controversial. You ended up passing the Recovery Act by just a couple votes. A hard case to make to our colleagues. We're drowning, yet we're going to go out and spend almost $1 trillion to try to revive the economy. You went ahead and, at a time when there was anger but also confusion, you shepherded through the passage of Dodd-Frank, still extremely controversial, but in my view, stabilized the economy and Wall Street. And you even were able to get New START passed at a time when tensions between East and West were extremely delicate as they are now. But the reason why I think your colleagues went with you, Harry, because they knew you'd always have their back. You weren't going to ask them for the tough vote. You're going to do everything in your power to help them. And you did. Through your PAC, through your contacts, through your personal engagement. Ask anybody who's run on our side of the aisle, and I'm sure it's similar with you, Mitch, on your side. The very election of, I can think of, a half a dozen senators in the last 8 years rested on Harry's organizational intervention. He's a new Harry. You didn't ask without giving. And you know, your background, I'm not going to repeat because some of it has been talked about already, but I don't think it's any surprise to people why I like you so much. You know, you grew up in Searchlight, I grew up in Scranton and Claymont. You always knew the one person in your crowd who, when you were jumped by 2 or 3 guys, would jump in even though he was going to get the hell beat out of him too. No, I'm serious. I'm being deadly earnest. That's you, Harry. Always there, except the difference between you and me, you knew how to box. You knew how to box. And on a personal note, Harry, the way you embraced me and my family, whether when I was hospitalized for 7 months or whether personal losses occurred, the way you did what a lot of senators do, but you did it constantly. You know, another expression my dad had, you do me a favor, I appreciate it. Do my son or daughter a favor, I never, ever, ever forget it. You embraced my beau, my son. You helped him get elected. You embraced my son, Hunter, and you reached out to my daughter. Not a lot of highfalutin rhetoric, just there, just there. You know, it kind of reminds me, again, what I like most about this place. Whether it was the last vote Teddy Kennedy cast, everybody knew he was dying. Yet everybody, Democrat and Republican, and he came to make sure he could break a tie. Everybody, including his political opponents, stood and cheered and cheered and cheered and cheered and cried. Never forget the day that Hubert Humphrey walked on the floor. It was clear he didn't have many days left. He was gaunt, his hair was gone. And he walked down the well to vote. And your dad was there, man. And Barry Goldwater walked up to him and embraced him. And they hugged each other and they cried, not letting go. I think you were there, John. I remember the absolute deadly silence in the chamber. Two men who could not have been further apart. They loved each other. One of the things I learned from some of my senior colleagues, if you're here long enough and you listen, you learn the other woman or man's perspective. You learn that no one's perspective is the only perspective. Each of us understands that our actions, if you're here long enough, have to represent decency and reflect honor. And that the capacity of the American people who are privileged to serve is the only way we can satisfy them. My guess is, Harry, that you believe that I believe that this is the greatest profession. It's the honor of my life to serve the United States Senator. And I never had the high honor and privilege you had of leading the Senate, both in majority and minority. But you've served at the behest of the people of your state, who trusted you consecutively to represent. And you've done it so well, Harry. Let me close with a quote from John Adams, one of my favorite quotes about the Senate. John Adams said, and I quote, "The Senate is the colossus of the Constitution. No republic," he said, "can ever be for any duration without a Senate. And a Senate deeply and strongly rooted, strong enough to bear up against all popular storms and passions." That's the place I'm proudest of. Because with all our ups and downs, because of men and women like you, Harry, it still fills that role. There's another quote, Harry, that goes like this: "An institution like the Senate, an institution is little more than the lengthened shadow of a man or a woman. The reason why it's a colossus still. Because of men like you, Harry. I love you, pal. I know that embarrasses you, but I do.
Joe is scheduled to be in Canada right now for a meeting with Prime Minister Trudeau. But he's going to go late, real late. So, Joe, thank you very much. I said yesterday in a fairly long speech I gave regarding Senator Biden, as I call him, his life is what movies should be made of and are made of. What a story. I have great affection for Joe Biden, for how he's treated me. Always. Phone calls returned like that. His chief of staff, Steve Ricchetti, is the best. So, Joe, thank you for being who you are to me and to everybody else. I gave a long speech this morning, and so everybody just relax. This isn't going to be a long one. As most of you know, I don't talk long. I probably talk too much, but not long. But as I look around the room, I have such warmth for so many different reasons. My wife, my children, my grandchildren down to the front row. Beautiful human beings, inside and out. I look around this room and see my staff, former staff. They have made my career. I take the credit for it, but they've made my career. I look over here at senators I serve with now and senators I have served with. Oh, I feel so bad about John Glenn. He was such a hero. I can remember the first caucus I attended. John Glenn said, I'm going out on the aircraft carrier Kennedy Friday or Saturday, whenever it was. Anybody want to go with me? Not a person raised their hand except me. And as I said this morning, I don't go to a lot of stuff. One Super Bowl, one World Series, that was enough. Never been to a congressional White House ball. Went to one state dinner. That's because of Rory. Spent 2 years in Argentina. Went to one congressional picnic. That's because of Key. Wanted to show off for Miley, and he did a good job because they're married now with 4 children. But I went out on the aircraft carrier. Once was enough for me. Boy, that was rough. But I was there with John Glenn. I want one more story about John Glenn. He called me when I decided I wasn't going to run again. He said, I'm so damn mad at you that you're not running again. I said, John, I hurt myself and I'm not going to be able to do that. He said, I'm still mad. He was so good to me. But as I look over here, I'm not going to go through the roll call, but gee whiz, what memories. Ben Nelson. Ben, I've said this before, I'll say it again. Ben Nelson gave up his career for something he believed in. I call him once in a while just to remind him, because if there was ever anything that brings a tear to my eye, it's Ben Nelson and the sacrifice he made for the country. And he was right, it was the end of his career. So Ben, the nation owes you a lot. The people of Nebraska owe you a lot. And you've heard about the Screw Nevada bill. He's here that did it. There he is. Bennett, stand up. But I'll tell you, we are the reason, you and I and a few others, why earmarks should come back. Because when we worked together, Barbara Mikulski, when we worked together, we did what the Constitution said we should do. We had congressionally directed spending. They were earmarks. Why should we, as members of Congress, give that authority to the White House? That's what's happened, and it's brought the Congress to a standstill. Bring back the earmarks. And one of the great earmarkers of all time is right down there, with the red tie. So Bennett, thank you very much. You were a friend. I have so many fond memories of you. We did a lot of stuff together. Pete Domenici, we worked together. We got things done. Paul Sarbanes, the sage of the Senate. I'm not going, I would love to talk about each one of you because there's so many memories I have of everyone. I've served with 281 senators. Joe, you served with more than that, but I served with 281. And I say this without any reservation. There's not a single senator that I didn't like. It was hard to get here. You had to admire them just for that alone. And I said this morning, and I'll say it again, Mitch McConnell and I are lawyers. I was a trial lawyer. I went to court a lot, over 100 jury trials. And you know, I would be so upset at my lawyer opponent. How could he talk this way? He's wrong. He's wrong on the facts. He's wrong on the law. But when the case was over, that day of court was over, we walked out and we're friends. Everyone, I know you don't like the story, but Mitch McConnell and I are friends. We work together. We do our best to enunciate our cause, and I don't like what he does a lot of times. He doesn't like what I do most of the time, but that's okay. We understand what our jobs are. Now, Nancy, thank you so much. I know that someone mentioned that I killed privatization of Social Security, but we did it together. I have found her to be so thoughtful, so kind, and so considerate, and Landra and I love her and love Paul. When Landra took over the spouses operation, they had a what is it called? Show off your clothes. What's it called, Lynn? Fashion show. And she, of course, if I do so say myself, she looks pretty good most of the time. And the only time she doesn't is when I catch her in her pajamas sometimes. But anyway. Anyway, Paul Pelosi, this handsome man, would you be part of our fashion show? Of course. He walked down the just with everybody else. He got the biggest applause of anybody. So Nancy and Paul are good sports. They're good people, and I'm going to miss you so very much, Nancy. Hillary Clinton. There's no way that I, in the brief time I have here today, can adequately pay tribute to Hillary Clinton as a person, as a leader, as a role model, and a friend, a loyal person. She's one of the finest public servants in the history of our great country. She's a skilled statesman, or should I say a skilled, how do you put statesman, woman, whatever, but and of course, a dignified legislator, a good legislator, and a wonderful diplomat. So thank you very much, Hillary, for being here. But I do have to say, I mentioned her loyalty. My son, Rory, basically took a year and a half off work to work on her campaign 8 years ago. She has never forgotten it. When she comes to town, or Bill comes to town, Rory is part of the entourage that goes to dinner that night. So thank you for being who you are. I mentioned my staff, and the one person I didn't mention, and I should, because he devoted such loyal service to me, was so good to me and to Landra and to his staff. A lot of my staff that's here today were hired by David Crone. So David, thank you very much for all you've done. Now, did Rahm Emanuel show up? Where is he? Mayor, has your finger ever grown back? No. Rahm Emanuel, in case you don't know, on this little private joke, he was cutting meat and whacked off his finger. And I guess I shouldn't joke about that, but he's done okay with missing part of a finger. Rahm, I know you have some real obligations as mayor of that huge, very, very beautiful city. But I want everyone here to know that he was President Obama's first chief of staff, and he took no prisoners. We worked so hard. That was during the first Obama Congress. You remember that, Joe? And we delivered big time. We worked hard together, and I was always a nice guy. He was not. Oh, he could be so tough. And as far as the language, we all know Rahm's language. He tried to convert me to a lot of those words, but I didn't fall for it. Rahm, but thank you very much, because that Congress that we worked with the president, the vice president, our Congress, was the most productive in the history of the country, more so than the first Roosevelt administration. And I'll never forget, we did a lame duck. That was a lame duck we'll remember, because Lindsey Graham was so impressed with what we did that he said numerous times, Harry Reid ate our lunch. And of course, you were behind a lot of that, Rahm. So thank you, Rahm, for being here. That means so very, very much to me. Chuck Schumer. He's my friend. He's going to be my successor. He's going to talk to us a little bit. And I appreciate the friendship that he's shown me, the sacrifices that he's made for the country, for Democrats, and for taking positions that he didn't want to take. He had the Democratic Campaign Committee twice. Wow. Well, Chuck, so thank you very much. I'm not going to tell you everybody how smart you are, because we already know that. Okay, I'll tell them. Everybody here Those of you who have taken the LSAT, you hate to hear that, huh? Yeah, I'll bet. Perfect score. SAT, perfect score. And he has a perfect score with me. Dick Durbin, what a great guy. We came together. We came to the Senate together. He, Schumer, and Murray, my leadership team, we've done it here together. I so admire Dick Durbin for the person he is, the sensitive man. He legislates. There are very few people legislate as much with their heart as he does. He legislates with that heart. He has a heart as big as his chest. Dick, thank you very much for being the friend that you've been to me. Patty Murray has been indispensable to me during my time as leader. Her counsel has always been private, it's always been sage, and it's been direct. Not a lot of words. I appreciate it very much. And I'm very happy to know that Senator Schumer is going to have them as part of his leadership team, and it's something you'll never regret. I talked this morning about majority leaders. Well, one of them's here that is as responsible as anyone for allowing me to be a leader, Tom Daschle. Tom, thanks for being here. Shortly after I was elected the assistant leader of the whip, I went to him to complain about something. I thought he'd given one of the other senators a little too much. He says, stop that. He said, the whip's job, you're going to make it what you want it to be. And I did, didn't I? Yeah. So thank you a lot, Tom. Thanks for trusting me. You gave me the privileges of the floor. I was there when the Senate opened and when it left. Thank you so much. John Boehner was going to come. Did John show up? Well, good. Speech is getting too long anyway. You know, I can't thank everyone who's here today, but please know how much you've meant to me. I wish I could talk to each of you, but I can't. I talked this morning about my family. I love my boys and my girl and my 19 grandchildren, 5 children Landon and I have had. And as indicated this morning, we learned from them when we were, the first 2, we were children raising them. And then we call them the big kids and the little kids. And then we waited 6, 7 years and had 3 more. And we've learned with them, just like we did with the big kids. So I told everyone this morning that my desire in life has been and always will be to make sure that I let you know how much I care about you, how much affection I have for you, how proud I am of you, and the wonderful parents you are to my grandchildren. Landra and I have had a love affair for more than 60 years. She was a sophomore in high school, I was a junior. And we've been inseparable. We've done it together. I mean, I would have dropped out of law school so quickly to go back to my friends in Nevada, but not with her. It was hard, but she knew what we wanted to accomplish together in life. She helped me always. Always has been my rock. And above all, my lover and my friend. So, this room is filled with leaders, leaders of the Senate, leaders in the House, Vice President, former Secretary of State, the Majority Leader of the Senate. We all know what leadership entails. It's not easy and not glamorous a lot of the time. Leaders understand the highs and the lows. As I said this morning, it's joy, and then, wow, what are we going to do now? As much as I love my job as leader of the Senate, there have been times when I've been terrified, frustrated, but you know, the terror and the frustration passes quickly. And Chuck, that's what you have to realize. We've had a lot of issues, and we're not going to go through them, but we've made it through them. So I feel gratified that someone with my background could be a leader for our country. So now I'm going to introduce the person that's painted my picture. This young man worked for me. I first saw him when he was a little boy. His dad, who's here, worked for Senator Stennis in the Appropriations Committee. And Gavin can still remember. He was there drawing pictures. And I went up to him and said, "What are you drawing?" and talked to him a little bit. Well, he worked for me. He was 22 years old. He'd been with me a year and a half or 2 years. And he got sick, really sick. He had a tumor in his chest the size of a tennis ball. And we weren't sure he was going to make it. His parents weren't sure, and he certainly wasn't sure. Well, they're wheeling this young man into the operating room for this stunningly terrorizing event in his life. He says to himself, nobody's there to listen. He said, if I make it out of this, I'm not going to work in some office. What I'm going to do is draw pictures and paint. That's what I've done all my life, and I'm going to try to do that. And his good parents, when he got out of the hospital and was well, he moved in with them and spent years in their home perfecting his craft. Gavin Galakis is a great painter. He painted a portrait of my wife. Many of you have seen it in my office. He has paintings all over America. He's a portrait painter, a landscape painter, and above all, he's my friend. Gavin?
Thank you so much. Senator and Mrs. Reid, thank you so much for choosing me to paint your portrait. This means such a great deal to me on both a personal and a professional level, and I will always be proud of this. Senator Reid told the story I didn't know if you remembered, but when I was a kid, my dad worked for the Appropriations Committee, and one day I went with him to work, and I was sitting in the corner of a room like this. It seemed like there were hundreds of people in there, and I was drawing in my sketchbook, and when it finished up, the hearing finished up, and everybody filed out, a nice gentleman in a suit came over, and he sort of took a knee, and he said, "Hey, son, what do you have there? Did you do those drawings? How about that?" And he made a really big deal out of the drawings that I was doing. And when he walked off, my dad came up to me and he said, "Do you know who that was?" That was Senator Reid. So fast forward 10 or 12 years, I was getting out of college, and I decided not to pursue art full-time. Enough people told me how difficult it is. So the plan was to go to law school and to paint on the weekends, and I actually got a job working for Senator Reid on his staff. And it was a great experience. I should say that I was the lowliest of lowly LCs. But one of the highlights of my time on the Hill is that I used to meet with Senator Reid once a week for 5 minutes to go over something, and we developed a really nice relationship. I was the low man, I was the lowest man on the totem pole, and he was always really sweet to me, and we always got along really well. And I'd go over to his whip office, he had just become the whip, and I'd go over to the Capitol, and as I was going through the Capitol, I was just in awe of all the great paintings in the hallways. Now, I've always loved portraits. I've always loved history and psychology and politics, and I've always thought it was just a great challenge to give yourself as an artist. But those paintings were a constant reminder that I simply didn't have the courage to pursue the only goal that I'd ever had. So after about a year and a half, I made my decision. I drove over to my parents' house, and I sat them down, and a very curious thing happened. As Senator Reid told you, I got very sick. Now, I asked the doctors, and they told me that that could have happened to me at any point in my life. And it happened exactly when I made that decision. I spent about 6 months in and out of the hospital, and they eventually took a tumor out of my lung, and I've been fine ever since. But at the risk of sounding melodramatic, there were some moments where I wasn't sure I was going to make it, and that's when I realized life is short. I only have one goal. It's the goal I've had my whole life. I have to throw everything I have at it. And that was 15 or 16 years ago. And I consider that by far the most fortunate thing that's ever happened to me in my life. So now at this point, I've painted some portraits of some people that a lot of you probably know and recognize. I was elated early in my career when Senator Reid asked me to paint a portrait of Mrs. Reid, and then he took it and he hung it up in the United States Capitol next to a portrait of Mark Twain. But the fact of the matter is, there are portrait artists out there who are older and farther along than I am, who have painted every president and every crowned head of Europe and every titan of industry. And Senator Reid could easily have chosen one of them to paint his portrait. And as far as I can tell, the reason why he didn't is that underneath it all, underneath the great statesman and the brilliant strategist and the hardscrabble kid from Searchlight who boxed his way through college, and the man who's fought his entire life for people who aren't strong enough to fight for themselves, underneath all of that and the bedrock of all of that is a sweet, sweet person who, when given the opportunity to walk on by or to stop and help someone up, has spent his entire life stopping and helping people up. Senator, I can't tell you how much I enjoyed working with you on this. If you want to spend Sundays next summer watching baseball while I paint, I'm in. I will be proud of this for the rest of my life. Mrs. Reid, Senator Reid, thank you so much.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's been an amazing afternoon. Harry, you're going to be a hard act to follow this afternoon, and even a harder act to follow as leader. And I want to thank the Vice President and Secretary Clinton, Majority Leader McConnell, Leader Pelosi, all the great family, so wonderful and beautiful and cute. I see how excited you are. Landra, as he says, you're his rock, his strong, quiet, always there rock. My great colleagues, past, present. It's just amazing. Now, Harry, how embarrassed are you that we all showed up? I know I know of nothing you'd rather do less than sit and hear us all go on about you. But I also know you're a good sport. I've seen that over and over again. One of my favorite memories is on a congressional trip, actually the only Codell I've ever gone on. Harry kept bugging me to go. And it was to China, and there were a group of 10 of us, and it occurred in the spring break. It was very ecumenical. So we spent Easter Sunday at an evangelical church in China that was sort of being oppressed by the Chinese government. But it was also Passover, and there were a few Jewish members, and so we had a Seder. Harry, actually, with his always spirit of looking out for someone else and generosity, we had it in Macau. Now, on the trip were Frank and Bonnie Lautenberg. They were to conduct the Seder. But they spent the whole time. Seder's pretty long, Passover Seder, before you eat. And Frank and Bonnie prolonged it by arguing with each other about how to conduct the Seder. Frank, you don't do it that way. Shut up, Bonnie. It's this way. And it went on and on and on. I saw Harry. He was seated next to Iris and me. He was squirming. I know him well. Steam was coming out of his ears. He wanted to get on with it and get back home. It was getting late. But, impatient as Harry was, the Seder always wins. And so it did. But God bless his heart, Harry sat there for a whole hour, another hour, very polite, never said a word. And that's who he is. He's always been a good sport. He takes what comes, doesn't complain, doesn't whine, just does the best with whichever situation he's in. So, Harry, while you're in a sporting mood, I'll try to add a few words to what has already been said. He's not only somebody who can be quiet and take it as it is, he can at times be passionate. And I'm going to let some of you know this story, but I'll let many of you in on a secret. Other than Landra, there's another woman that he gave a big, fat, wet, sloppy kiss on the lips to in this room. Yep. Harry and I were sitting there at the election night of 2006. It was all hanging in the balance, whether we'd get the majority. And when the TV from Missouri came on, and Claire McCaskill came out as the winner, Harry, in front of hundreds, marched up to the TV and just started kissing Landra. Sorry, not Landra, Claire, over and over again. I had to go up and wipe off the TV. Now, I got to know Harry when he came to the Senate in 1999. Here was this man, soft-spoken Mormon from Searchlight, Nevada, a town that was miles from nowhere, and here I was, a brash Jewish kid out of Brooklyn, a match made in heaven. I quickly learned that soft-spoken didn't mean that he would keep his opinions to himself or sand down the rough edges. We've all heard him on the floor. He's never been cagey with the reporters. Harry would look at my shoes every so often when I'd walk in the room and pull me aside in the corner and slip $20 to me and said, "Get a shoe shine already." He was blunt even about his bluntness. He once remarked about some political flare-up. Could I have couched my words more carefully? Maybe. But I said it, and I meant it, and I'm not apologizing for it. It's just the truth. That is vintage Harry. Now, if you've heard about Harry's childhood, as we all did today in his final speech, you begin to understand why he is so plain-spoken. He's a product of his environment, like we all are. But with Harry, it's not exactly the way you'd expect. Hardscrabble childhoods like his, especially when they produce a person of such prominence, tend to instill in a person that mythology of rugged individualism, picking yourself up by your bootstraps, going at it alone. And Harry learned that lesson, but he had such a big heart, he also learned a much different lesson, and that is that in tough circumstances, we need each other more. He wrote about how he and his brother would stick together to stand up to their father if he was being rough on their mother. As a young lawyer, he would take cases that no one else wanted, defending folks he knew were guilty, but he also knew they were treated unfairly by the system in some way. He abhorred that unfairness and injustice in life, no matter who it afflicted. Ultimately, the lesson Harry carried with him throughout his life was that no one goes it alone, and was part of his responsibility to stick up for those caught in, quote, the tentacles of circumstance, as LBJ put it. It was that same instinct that led him to take a hard-charging freshman from New York under his wing. I'm telling you, there is no one better to have in your corner than Harry Reid. Much has been made of his boxing career, and it's true, he's a tenacious fighter, tough, smart, and relentless. But what these descriptions often miss is that the important thing is not that you fight. The important thing is what and who you fight for. Harry fought for people. He fought to protect seniors from the privatization of Social Security and Medicare. He fought to get the ACA over the finish line, providing health care to 22 million Americans who never had health care before, just like his family. He fought for the environment. He had one of the most illustrious records when it comes to clean energy, land conservation, and preserving historical landmarks. He had a passion for them. I remember when he visited Hyde Park in New York for the first time, and he talked to me about it for about a half hour, on and on. And that was it, until one day, about 7, 8 months later, I got a call from the head of the Hyde Park Monument. He said, thanks for that $15 million earmark you put in the appropriations bill. I didn't even know it was there. was Harry M. Reid. He fought for the things he cared about, and though he didn't always prevail, he always kept fighting. And honestly, in the true tradition of Harry honesty, I had the exact same lines from the boxer that Nancy Pelosi read. I think I'll read, that Hillary read, but I'll read them again because they're so apropos. In the clearing stands a boxer, a fighter by his trade, and he carries the reminders of every glove that laid him down, but the fighter still remains. Harry's the third longest serving Senate leader, and as we all know, the higher you go, the more fiercely the winds blow. You can easily lose your way, get blown off course, beaten down. Your fighting spirit can flag. What keeps people going is their internal gyroscope, their sense of right and wrong. No one has a better internal gyroscope than Harry Reid. So while Harry carries the scars of tough legislative battles, hard-won victories, heartbreaking setbacks, Harry Reid, the fighter, has always remained. He was always guided through those fights by his internal gyroscope, and that's why, having talked to him, I know he has very few regrets. Watching him, working by his side, it taught me how to be a senator and a leader. He taught me that our Senate caucus is a family. He taught me how we all look out for each other's back. He taught me to stay true to myself. Despite the obvious differences, we're both from these remarkably defining places. And Harry Reid goes by the same credo I do. I'm from Brooklyn. Sometimes it helps me, sometimes it hurts me, but I'd be a lot less of an individual if I tried not to be from Brooklyn. The same exact thing could be said about Harry and Searchlight, Nevada. In fact, writing about his hometown, Harry said that, quote, "Much attention is paid in public life to the importance of the collection of attributes that we call character." He wrote, "Somewhat less attention is devoted to consideration of where character is born. Character and values come from places you wouldn't necessarily think to look, because some of the men and women of greatest character that I will ever meet in my life came from this place of hard rocks and inhospitable soil." He was talking about his friends and family and the people he knew growing up, but I don't think truer words could ever be spoken about the man himself. In my life, he is one of the men of greatest character that I have ever met. Powerful, but with uncommon humility, honest and loyal, unsparingly funny, a scrappy fighter with this great big heart, a titan of the Senate. He's one of the most unique men that any of us will ever meet. Truly one of a kind. And I've been lucky to call him my colleague, my mentor, my friend. Harry, I would not be the senator nor the man I am today without you. I can only say thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I'll miss you. So, folks, it'll be quite some time until we see another like Harry Mason Reid. Until then, this portrait will have to do. Thank you. And folks, please remain in your seats after the portrait is unveiled until Vice President Biden and Secretary Clinton depart the room following their photo with Senator Reid at his leader portrait. Thank you.
did that already myself.